Yes, and to make it, improvising through imposter syndrome. I'm just going to point out, one, this is sort of an improvised presentation, mainly because I finished the slides at like 8:05. So, I wanted to practice what I preach, and not because I was procrastinating. So let's go with this was intentional. And you can also see, from like my last talk yesterday, I didn't pay for a font, and I just found a generator. Today, I found an image that I want, and like Adobe was like, oh, you need to buy a whole bunch of credits. And I was like, you know what? I have no shame. I have shame in other areas, but not when it comes to buying like credits for like 5 images I'm not gonna even use. So there, this is my pride and joy right there. Adobe has their credit. Adobe stuck. So I'm Crystal Preston-Watson. I am a quality engineer for Spruce Labs, which is just kind of down the road. I like to wear panda hats, and I profess that I am a nerd. I am a proud nerd. I am also someone who has done improv for, since 2011. I started out taking classes at Second City in Toronto, mainly because I was working like really long hours, 18 hours, and I happened to be on the streetcar and I saw the Second City sign, and I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna do something that is not slipping under my desk when I miss the subway. And that's kind of how I started. And once I got back to Denver, I took classes at the Bovine downtown, and actually graduated from their improv program there. And I've also taken classes at the Voodoo. And also at the Voodoo, I had my own show called Stimprov. Please notice the logo, because not the guy, I didn't do that. That was paid. But I created that logo, and that took like 20 hours. And I'm like, because I am not a designer, and I'm very proud of it. But it's a show. It's on super long hiatus right now, where it was a troupe of us. A lot of us worked in STEM careers, some engineers, some scientists, and we did improv. We also did things in the show. So one show we built a structure. Has anyone done Odyssey of the Mind at all? Yeah. Yeah, so you know that there's in Odyssey of the Mind, they do this thing where you build a structure in some of the kind of challenges. So in one of our performances, while we were improv, we built something with balsa wood. And I was thinking that it was going to like completely fail. We built it really strong. So when you have like engineers, like structural engineers on an improv team, they will make something extremely strong. And we had to have someone just kind of kick it down to destroy it. Something you should know about me, I have social anxiety disorder. I diagnosed like probably over 10 years ago. As I saw recently on a clip, I am very awkward in the body. I am just super awkward. I am someone who, for a while, I would not leave my house. I would work remote, and I would not leave my house for like weeks or months at a time. So doing something like this and doing performances is extremely scary. I have this chair here because sometimes I get so nervous that I'm like, I feel like my legs are gonna just drop like underneath me. And so if you've ever seen me perform improv, sometimes I will have a character that has to use a chair because it's like, okay, I'm getting a little bit too overwhelmed. So today we're going to kind of talk about kind of getting a fundamentals of what imposter syndrome is, and then talk about improv fundamentals, and then we're going to get into some techniques and exercises. Do not worry, I know kind of how it is. Like you go to a talk and they're like, we're going to do exercises, and now we're going to make you get out of your comfort zone and talk to people. I'm not going to do that. I know it's a worthwhile kind of thing to do. But it is so, I don't want to put anybody in that position that I have been in, where it's like, okay, it's like now you're gonna say all these things, and now you're gonna embrace the people and hug them and tell them that you love them so much. And like, short story, I once went to a summer camp for people with low self-esteem. This was in 7th grade. And I did not want to go, but my guidance counselor was like, no, you have to go. And I got there the night, and they were like, oh, we're going to make one foot warm fuzzies. And it's like this necklace where you put like things, and you had to hug people. And I was like crying, and it was just like, oh, give everybody a hug. From that summer camp, I hate Ace of Base. I saw the sign so much. It is like a Pavlov and trigger for me, because it's like that's how they would call us back to do exercises. And it was just like a death bell. It's like you have to go hug someone. You have to go have someone in your personal space. Okay, so let's talk about what imposter syndrome is. I think we all pretty much know. I mean, how many people here feel like they suffer from imposter syndrome? Woo! I mean, a great deal of us. Imposter syndrome is just, a psychological term referring to a pattern of behavior where people doubt their accomplishments and have a persistent, often internalized fear of being exposed as a fraud. And this is something I struggle with. I have been in tech for about 10 years. I started off, I was a web editor at Westward. I was an interactive producer at the Rocky Mountain News before it closed. I was there like the last night, and I almost tried to steal a TV because I was like, I'm gonna get my due. And I've always struggled with that, even though I don't have a college degree. And I was once told by a professor that when right before I dropped out, it's like, you'll never work, and I was in a journalism program, he's like, you'll never work anywhere, if you don't, because your grades are not great. And they weren't. Like, I think I didn't grad, but I left with like a 1.8. And this is from Metro, and I got asked to leave CU, and they were like, hey, how about you go to Metro? And Metro was like, hey, how about you never come back here? And the funny thing is that about a year or two after the Rocky closed, that professor I actually worked with at the Rocky, and that was a really fun day when he saw me walk into the newsroom, and my manager was like, hey, here's our new interactive producer. I'm like, I know HTML. That's why I'm here. But I actually interviewed with the New York Times, and I didn't get the job, but I was just like, they called me back, and I don't have a degree, and even though I've had these types of successes, I still every day question, I am the biggest fraud on the planet. Why does anyone hire me at all? It's and mixed with my social anxiety disorder, it's just this constant churning that I'm constantly fighting against. And it's really kind of the whole gist of imposter syndrome is that you have it's not because you lack experience and skills and you're not smart and know what you're doing. It's that you have such a ridiculous high level of self-expectation. I mean, I don't from everyone I've met who says, hey, I have imposter syndrome. These people have, and I know, and I've had people tell me, my husband tells me all the time, it's like, my expectations of myself are just astronomical. And I feel that's what it is that you expect so much of yourself, and no one could really, live up to that expectation. And so when you don't, the self-doubt creeps in, and you're constantly saying, well, I didn't do this impossible standard, so I must be a fraud. I must not be, good enough. why am I in this room with all these people? And this is something that, for junior developers and designers and anyone new to any sort of career has, but it's also something that constantly, like, where, I know people who are like, senior, like, at their law firms who are kind of like, who have tried cases and they're like, and won, and they're like, yeah, I feel like a fraud. And I'm like, you've just like won a lawsuit that's like worth billions of dollars, and how do you feel like a fraud? But it's just like, well, I could have done this particular thing, right? Or we could have gotten like, $2 more, and I'm just like, what? Yes, I need a what? So there's not just one type of kind of how you feel like an imposter. There are actually 5 types. I discovered this is Dr. Valerie Young. She's a psychologist that kind of, her specialty is imposter syndrome. So she breaks it down to 5 types. There is and you should know that this is not I think depending on what situation that you're in, you can be several of these. So in one place you might be a perfectionist, the next you might be, the natural genius or whatever. But let's kind of just go briefly into these. So you have the perfectionist, which is the focus on how something is done. I think we all kind of like, well, it has to, I know I get that where it's like, it has to be done right. It has to be done this way. It has to have no loose ends. It has to be this pristine, perfect thing. It's something where if I look at it and like even someone's like, people will say, oh, this is awesome. I'm like, no, I can see this one thing I didn't do correctly. Then there's the super woman, man, person. Measure competence based on how many roles they can juggle and excel in. And that person. These are the people who are like in every single activity. They are working late. They're, on the weekends, they're climbing like the 14ers twice. They are like, but then, then they're hitting the bar and like, yeah, I'm going to do a keg stand. Like they are the person like that's just like, they are just everywhere and doing everything, and they want to be the best at everything that they do. And if they're not, they feel like, yeah, then I'm not living up to expectations. The natural genius cares about how and when accomplishments happen. And I think this is something, especially for how many of you kind of when you're younger, you had like teachers who were like, oh man, or like just parents or friends were like, man, you are like the smartest person ever. You're gonna like be a rocket scientist at NASA and like do all this stuff. Because I know that that's what happened to me. I started reading from a young age and they're like, yeah, you're gonna be this like amazing, like, and that kind of got me hyped up. Like, yeah, this is gonna be good until I got to high school and I'm like, I hate this. I just want to read books. I don't want to interact with anybody in this classroom. And so my grades, I flunked driver's ed. That was fun because I almost ran into a house. And, and I was not a natural genius in that. It's kind of one of these things, but I still kind of have in the back of my head that I should just know things right off the bat, and no one like tells me, like has to like sit and give me instructions, because it should just be something that comes natural to me. And when it doesn't, I'm just like, well, I suck. The soloist cares about mostly who accomplishes a task. This is something I know we all kind of run into, the kind of coworker who's like, I will do this, I will send the email, I will write the report. You can go just sit over there, and when all this comes together, I'll get all the credit, and I will tell everyone how you did not help me at all, and I'm just this rock star. I'm a rock star. I'm a 10x engineer. And that's now that comes like, you can have someone that's like that, who's like self-confident, so they don't suffer imposter syndrome, where they're like, yeah, I can do all this. But then there's people who do, who are kind of like, who are like, well, I have to do this alone. And it feeds into kind of natural genius and perfectionist. And then the expert, the knowledge version of the perfectionist, primary concern on what and how much you know or can do. Again, feeds into the natural genius of like, well, I should just know this, and I should be the one that is leading the charge. And if I'm not, then everyone's going to see that I'm not, I'm not skilled enough, I'm not experienced enough, I don't know what I'm doing. So we're going to get into the fundamentals of improv. If you were all Office, The Office, this is from the episode where Michael is going to the improv group. And one of my favorites because he kind of breaks the fundamental rules of improv, which is he kept trying to take over the scene by having a gun and making everyone do what he wanted. Which is completely antithesis of what you should do in improv. So basically, improv is a form of live theater where the acting, plot, dialogue, and characters of a story or scene are made up in the moment. Often, improvisers take suggestions from the audience or use something else to inspire them. So I don't know, like how many people have gone to an improv show or, oh, awesome, like that's really cool. I didn't see any of you at my improv show. Especially the one where there was like 2 people and they were both drunk. But that was actually probably the best show because they probably didn't remember how bad it was. So I think, so you're all like, you went to live shows. And, if you're familiar with Who Line Is It Anyway, Wild 'N Out, which I have never seen, but I needed something, like, the only time I've seen it is like in GIFs, and I'm like, okay, Nick Cannon. And then from BoJack Horseman, like, if there's, for a stand-in for Scientology, I don't know if the episode's called Yes and then Todd joins an improv group, and then the improv coach is like, whoever the guy who started Scientology. It's a really good episode. I just spoiled it for you, so sorry. But pretend like you didn't hear me if you hadn't seen it yet. So now I'm just going to kind of go into how to use some of the techniques from improv in your kind of daily, your daily life, in your daily kind of work life, home life, whatever. Just kind of how to take improv techniques and kind of principles and use them outside of the stage. So the biggest principle, and if you ever take a improv class, which I always encourage people to do, even if you're not going to perform on stage, taking it in like a improv 101 is a great way to kind of, in a safe environment, kind of learn these techniques and ideas in more depth. But the first thing you'll learn on the first day is about yes and. Yes and means, as I said, you saving blocking for Twitter, is that you take things that you were given, you don't block others. So we call, and from what I was trained, we call them gifts. Someone gives you a gift, and you take it, you accept it, and then you turn and you add to it. It's if you've ever kind of seen in a show, if you've seen, improv not done well, and that's when you have characters on stage and one person is wanting to be that, to lead the scene, so they're blocking everybody's ideas. And this is something that in your work life, if you are, at work, and I'm gonna talk about my experience where I know when I was first starting out in QA, I was very resistant on having anyone tell me well, this is the way it should do it, mainly because I was afraid, well, if they tell me this, then they think I'm incompetent and I can't, it's and they just see me as lesser. And I've really learned over the years, especially once after I started doing improv, that yes, and is that, yeah, I'm, taking what they're telling me because, not, everyone's not out to get you. And, improving on it, it's like, yeah, this is really, thank you for this gift. Like, don't say that out loud because that's going to sound real weird. It's like, thank you for this gift of Cypress, and I will turn this into automated testing. But you're taking this knowledge and then really kind of further on making further discoveries, like because becoming the Cypress master of your workplace. Like, I guess I hope they're not calling me that at work. But really, it's really about taking what you were given. Be present. Get out of your head. This is really something which a lot of improvisers have trouble with first off, because a lot of people confuse improv with like scripted comedy. And so they're trying to think of characters in situations right away. And so they'll come into a scene and they'll start off with, and maybe they'll start the scene and they'll start conversation, and their partner or will go off in a different way, and they don't know what to do, and they freeze because it's like, well, I had an idea of what I was going to do, and now I can't do it because this person is going a completely different way, and then they get trapped. They're trapped in their own head. They're trapped in their own ideas, and really, this is something I know we all kind of deal with, where we get, we kind of have a problem. I know I've had to deal with really difficult things where I had to, kind of taking back to my own kind of example, I had to learn how to do Java and write tests in Java. And I do not know Java. And it was one of these things where I just kind of focused on this so much. I'm just like, okay, I have to learn Java. And it's like, it's very hard. What does compiling mean? Eclipse? It's like, and I just kept going down this road, and I wasted more time kind of just being inside my head of like, well, why I can't do it, that once I kind of broke free and really just started to say, let me just start at the beginning and go from there. Once I did that, I wrote somewhat crappy Java test. I would not want to even see them because they probably were really, really bad. But you know what? It doesn't matter because I got them written. So yeah, go past me. Trust your instincts. Make honest choices. So really, and it's funny. I know a lot of the stuff seems like, well, this is just like, obvious. But I think it takes some, like, having someone tell you really over and over again, like, these are the things that really can help. And once you start to really embody them, it really makes things a lot better. I mean, the fact that I'm up here and this is my second talk of this conference, and I did a webinar before this, and I'm doing a talk in San Francisco in November. I've trusted my instincts that I'll be okay doing these things. That, that I'm someone that I have knowledge. Like, even though I'm like, I can't talk about accessibility, even though I've worked as an accessibility engineer, and, I'm constantly, when I'm not at work, pouring through accessibility standards and studying for a certificate. I need to, I am qualified. I can trust that I know what I'm talking about. And if I don't, I know that I can find it because Google is my friend. Show, don't tell. Just do it. And this is important because I think you get caught in a trap. This is something that with improvisers, you'll get a lot of improvisers that will will tell you, like, now I'm going to go to the faucet and I'm going to pour you some water. Okay, now I'm walking to the faucet. And then they don't follow through, and it's like, so is he pouring water? Is he, it's like, drink this water now, please. And it's like, you're supposed to show the audience what you're doing. So that is, I'm gonna put my mic down. I'm gonna do some object work for you. It's been a while, so don't laugh. So it's like, so that is way more, because like from that tells you way more than just, telling you, because it's like, well, let people see what you can do. And that's something that really is, it's like, don't, if you feel, I know we get caught in this trap of like, well, I need to tell people what I can do. It's like, I can, it's like, I know, React, I know Angular, I know jQuery, like all of this, it's like, I know this, I know that, and because you feel like, well, if I say it, and I keep saying it, then it's, they'll know. But honestly, just do things and show people what you can do, because that says so much more than, just talk. It's like all talk and no action is, I was gonna say, like, what's that thing from the, whatever.
All work and no play makes Jack a
Yeah. I was gonna say the Stanley Hotel because I just visited. I'm like, I forget. Oh man, Stevie King, I'm sorry. Status. So this is something I am actually going to. How much time do we have left?
Oh, I was just saying that if you wanted to open it up to questions, we use 5 minutes.
Okay, so I'm going to do something. Status is something that you explore in improv, and it's usually because in relationships, a lot of times there is, I'm not going to say all the time, there is a high and low status. And I know for a lot of people, with imposter syndrome, low status is something that you kind of feel. And so in improv, you can play around with this and that. Someone has high status and someone has low status, and I don't tend to like that. If it's there for the scene, it's fine, but I don't like when there's constantly these like really harsh like power dynamics in a scene. And then also, especially sometimes people can get very harsh if they're going to be a high status person, and so they think high status is about demeaning someone, showing how wealthy they are because they're literally taking it from like at face value. But status is beyond just having a demeaning kind of demeanor towards someone. And so if someone wants to volunteer, I wanted to run to an exercise of kind of how you can, it's going to be more of a symbolism of how you can kind of use status to bring people to kind of a neutral level, or bring yourself to their level if you want it said that way. So any volunteers at all? Oh. Okay. So I just want you to kind of just tell me about yourself, or anything you're comfortable with. Or explain what you do, and I'm gonna have you hold the mic.
I'm Angela Daniels. I am a senior product manager, and I run the product team at name.com. We're a small domain registrar right here in Denver, Colorado.
So this, thank you so much. You can sit back there. So this is a very small kind of example of like mimicry. Like, so this is an exercise that I learned while I was taking improv of just kind of mirroring someone's kind of body language, and that really can help you as it helps you kind of connect to someone, because as you know, like when you have friends, you tend to, in like a group of friends or close friends, you tend to kind of mimic, you take on like similar phrases, shared phrases, similar body language and things like that. And so if you're in a situation where you feel that the power dynamic is super out of whack, or you feel super low status, starting to mimic. Now don't do it where it's like, it's super obvious, where you kind of, get into that, the movie Single White Female, where you're like cutting your hair and stuff like that. But, kind of taking on some, kind of a shared phrases, shared words, that's learning the jargon of like where you work and stuff like that, but not to the detriment of your own personality. So I'm not saying be a copycat, but I'm saying kind of put yourself into the status of the other people, of the culture around you, but without losing yourself, because that's where it's like when I felt that I was losing myself because I'm trying too much to emulate, then I just left. So this is pretty much, and I'll open up for questions. So this is a quote by Stephen Colbert, and Stephen Colbert actually started out at Second City, Chicago, and was an improviser, really good. Like, look him up on like his Second City stuff on YouTube, super good. He actually did a improv as a older Black woman that was really like good, because I was like, oh no, that's going to be like, ugh. And it was him and Steve Carell, and it was awesome because it was the rare time where it's like, this is not cringy, it's not demeaning, it was just played very well. So he's like my idol when it comes to improv. But this quote, life is an improvisation. You have no idea what's going to happen next, and you're mostly just making things up as you go along. So that's it, and I'll open up for questions. And if you have questions, I'll pass the mics, and if you don't have questions, you can just come up after and ask me stuff. Any questions? Going once?
Okay, so I guess my question is, so I work in an environment where I'm still a junior, I'm a year in my front-end dev career, and I'm experiencing this phenomenon where the team's kind of quarantining me and telling me this is who you are. We don't want you involved in this process because we don't have the time, we don't have the manpower to really train you up. So you're just gonna keep doing these small mundane tasks because that's what you are, you're a junior and they're putting you in this box. So how do you overcome this whole imposter syndrome when your own workplace is making you feel like that?
That is really good, because I have definitely been in that situation, and I know it's easy to say leave, and I'm going to be honest, if it's something that you've tried talking to people, definitely it's at the point where start looking for a new place. But if you're at the point where that's not really feasible, I really I think about what I've done in the past where I'm like, I want to leave. I don't feel like I've been pushed off to the side. I don't know what to really do. I kind of do this thing where I will do the bare minimum and I'll put my energy into bettering myself to get out of that situation. And so that is coming, and I don't really, because I'm someone who, when I enjoy a job, I really throw myself into it. But if it's getting to the point where it's harming me, I power down to like get my work done, not doing it half-assed, but get my work done to to that level. And then I'm putting that energy in like, at night, learning, working on some projects, getting, unfortunately, sometimes it's like, oh man, I got to go network and be awkward in the body around other people. But I need that energy to do that, and that's what I'm going to do. And so that's what I say to you, because I don't want you to be like, oh well, just mimic everybody else and do that, because at a certain point, don't change your status to where you are untrue to yourself. Any more questions? Oh, okay.
It's gonna be a real close up.
Oh yeah.
Now ask your question.
I really like what you had to say at first about high levels of expectations leading to high levels of self-doubt, because I see myself there. How do you manage that? How do you manage your expectations while still staying excited about things and challenging yourself and that sort of thing?
It helped. My husband helps me. So having someone to help you set your realistic expectations, because it's easy. Because a lot of this stuff is easy to kind of read and Google and be like, okay, this is what Google says, and and it's hard to really kind of take that and embody that. So my husband and people that I'm close to, when I kind of feel that I think I'm kind of going wildly too high with my expectations, help me bring me back to earth. And where it's he's actually gave me a pep talk before I got here. He's like, actually yesterday, and I was like, I'm gonna totally bomb this, and no one's gonna believe me that. And he's just like, you are the person like when he at his company, when he talks about accessibility, every time I tell you I'm doing something and it's violating some accessibility rule, you are you're like there, not yelling at him, but I'm just kind of giving him shaking my head and just giving him a look. And it's like, you're going to define. And it's like, this stuff, you have your presentation there, and it's like, it's like, you're good, and you are doing, you've prepared. And that kind of brought me down from you're like, oh man, I need to have fireworks, and, I need to, have this live coding, because I was thinking about live coding, and I am not the greatest coder, so that would have been like me trying to give VS Code up half the time. So yeah, so just really having someone that that you trust, that you can help you temper those very probably out of whack, super high expectations. And I know someone back there.
Okay, so first I want to tell you that was one of the most entertaining and insightful thoughts I've ever seen. So you were doing a great job. My question is though kind of the opposite to that first one. Do you have any tips for when we see somebody in the workplace that's kind of struggling with this or having one of those 5, helping them to get past that or draw them out of that kind of mind trap? Do you have any tips around that?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing is letting people know that they can come to you. Don't force it, because I've been in that situation where someone's like, oh man, I know you have, imposter syndrome. They literally said that to me, and I'm like, okay. So, they're like, I love you, and I'm gonna help you get through this. And I'm like, oh man, no, this is the self-esteem summer camp all over again. So it's really kind of just meeting with this, person, letting, and letting them know that you're there, that you're a support to them, that you are somewhere that can be a safe space to talk about things, and letting that person choose to do that. And it's really, and it's not just talk, it's through action too. So show, not tell. So, and that's really if you're in a meeting and you kind of pushing. So if you know the person, because I'll make tells where I'm like, I want to say something, but I have this thing about not interrupting people. So I kind of go, and I'm constantly waiting. So having some, I've been really fortunate to have people who are like, hey, I think Crystal's trying to say something. And that's something that I really, really appreciate. So really kind of, letting that person know that you're a resource for them, but then also showing that also and reinforcing that. I think, are we at time or we can do, okay.
So assuming we're going to improv shows or something to laugh,
Yeah.
how do you, if you have, how have you used humor in your workplace to kind of either get over a syndrome or kind of diffuse something that you see?
So it's kind of weird because I know at a lot of places I'm known as the very quiet one. So this was quite a few years ago, and I was working a lot of temp jobs, and I was at a job with someone who had I didn't really know this person, and he seemed very hostile towards me. And I come to figure out one day I saw their sleeve and they had a swastika on it. Yeah, so that was okay, so I had to work with this person. And this is something where it's really, something really, really uncomfortable. And it was snowing one day, and it was, I couldn't really, leave this job because I was not going to be able to pay my rent. So I definitely was looking, and we had to work closely one day together. I was, really afraid because this is someone who fundamentally does not like who I am and doesn't make me think I'm a person. So we're sitting there, and it happened to be snowing outside, and someone came in and they were like, it's snowing, and I was like, the person was talking to them, and I was like, yeah, it's oh, Crystal, it's snowing, and I said, oh, yeah, it's like a million white hands slapping me in the face. And the guy laughed, and so it really, it wasn't like, oh man, then we held hands and said kumbaya together, it was but it made it possible to get through that few hours of working together. So that's how I diffuse especially if I'm a big fan of talking through my issues. I try to be, I know I can be sometimes blunt, but I feel direct communication is best for me to be like, hey, we have an issue, can we get through that? But if I feel like we can't do that, sometimes I'll kind of crack a joke just to diffuse that and kind of get to show that, hey, I'm not, the awkward in the body person in the corner not talking, and you're wondering, it's I'm approachable, and I'm someone, I have a life outside of all this stuff. Okay, I think we are at the end, so
Yeah.
thank you all for coming.